Hello everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Today I'm really excited because I just found a new book series that I'm completely obsessed with. So I'm excited to talk about it. I started reading the first book of the series last week, and within a week I read all 6 of them. So we're going to be talking about the Bonds That Tie series. Originally, I was just going to read Unbroken Bonds. It was part of my January TBR. I'm still going to talk about these books briefly in the monthly wrap-up, but I decided to just do a separate video just so I don't make that video like super long, just because I ended up reading all 6 of these books, which kind of, it sounds like me, and I think I probably should have seen it coming because I was really interested in the series. I got on my radar a while ago and I just kind of kept putting it off on the back burner, and I just knew I was gonna love it. And I did. So it was super addicting and super exciting. Before I get started, I'll just say spoilers throughout this video for the entire series. I'm not going to go through like plot by plot for each book at this point because I read them so quick. They all kind of lumped together a little bit, so I'm not even sure if I'd be able to distinguish them very well. But I'm just super excited that I found something so exciting during this month of reading. This has just become like a 6-star series for me. So the first book, Unbroken Bonds by Bree. I would have to say overall, this whole series, I'm going to talk about it like as a full series. And I read a bunch of reviews last night, and I finished the last book last night and just kind of needed a little while to collect my thoughts because I just wanted to like do this video immediately and start screaming. But just to make it a little more coherent, I stepped away from it so I could really think about it a bit. And I read a bunch of the reviews too, and I really don't do that too often, but I was just kind of curious to see if everyone else liked it as much as I did. And I would probably say for myself, all of these books, especially the first 2, were definitely 5-star books for me. Maybe 4 or 5 stars for some of the other ones. Honestly, I can't wait to buy these books and reread them. I'm gonna give myself, a good 6 to 8 months before I do that, but they're on Kindle Unlimited. I read a bunch on there, and then I also listened on Audible to them as well, which I would recommend. I really liked both narrators a lot. I should probably get into what this story is about before I really get into my critiques of it. So we follow our main character, Ollie. She, in the beginning, her mother and her mother's bonded. They all die in a car accident. And in this world, people are like bonded, kind of like fated mates style, to each other or in like groups. In this case, Ollie is like the primary, and then she has a bunch of people who are bonded to her. And so she ran away from her bonded, which is kind of like unheard of in this society. And so in the beginning of the story, they found her and basically bring her back to her bonds, and now she has to deal with them. They hate her for leaving. She hates them because now she has to like basically give up her life and go live with them and live by their rules pretty much. And then unfortunately their first meeting doesn't go really well. So she has 5 bonds. Their names are North, Knox, Griffin, Atlas, and Gabe. And they all have different personalities, and I really liked all of their characters a lot, actually. The story was really well written. I think a lot of the reviews, and I'll get to it, I think maybe the lack of quality after the first 2-3 books kind of dropped off a little bit. But honestly, I really liked the series anyway. I'm a type of person that if I really am into characters and just like, the characters in the story, which I did in this case, like the plot, it's not that it doesn't matter, it just can kind of be crappy and I'll still really like it. After maybe the 3rd book, I still really enjoyed it, but those first couple of books were so angsty, really action-packed. They each ended on such a good cliffhanger. It was definitely like good vibes with the magic, not really like super descriptive, but fun enough. And there's a good like bully romance, there's enemies to lovers, there's a fun like magical element to this book and fantasy, a lot of action and suspense and really like angsty love, and a lot of good smut scenes too. I would say that the last couple books, I guess in retrospect, and I wonder how I'll feel once I reread this, could probably have just been one book. I think that might be my major gripe, is just the ending it just kind of ended. I think part of it was just because the big bad that we had earlier on in the stories, I don't know why I'm being so, like I already said spoilers, but anyway, there's another big bad. And I think by the time this other person was killed and now this new big bad took over, it was just one of those things where we knew our characters were going to win at that point. Like they even said they were unstoppable. So it was just more of a like when and where are they going to, meet up to defeat this person and then win. So then when they win, I kind of just wanted maybe a little more explanation as to what like happened, maybe a few more days of something. I was still expecting another like big like spice scene too, kind of at the end, and we didn't really get that. So maybe that was just more me assuming that's what we were going to get. And then there was an okay epilogue too, which was fine. It was just sort of like a few years later, just a basic, this is what's happening. This is like what I've been doing. This is what all the guys have been doing. And this is our lives now. I kind of wish we got to see like everybody a little more, but it was fine. But again, I think those first few books just really did well because of the whole, enemies to lover situation. And she really hated some of these guys. Some of them not as much, but they really hated her too. And even though the first few books were a little like predictable and repetitive in a way, it was still really, really fun to read, which I don't mind when books are repetitive, or I don't really mind when I can predict things either, as long as it's something I'm into. Like I said, if I'm really into the story and I like the characters, like I'm willing to let a lot of things go, where maybe with other books I'd be more critical to that. So I could definitely see someone that's not into this as much, not feeling the same way about it. But I was here for it from like pretty much the beginning. It really caught me immediately. I really liked our main character. Even with some of the predictable stuff, I just really thought she was a badass and pretty awesome. Even once that tension kind of went away and she, developed feelings for each of the guys, she's keeping a secret in the first couple books. And once that's kind of let out and the tension's gone, with people lying to each other, it's not that the story got more boring. There was definitely interesting stuff happened, but a lot of that tension was taken out a bit, just because then everyone's kind of okay with each other. And just at the beginning, you knew she was hiding something. And once they figured that out, it was just kind of like, okay, so this is what we're doing. And it just became more of like they were also like in a school environment in the first few books. So there was more of like going to classes and like seeing the same faces and different, people each day and different things that were going on. So then once we were out of that environment and put into a new place, it was just sort of like, okay, we're all here, we're doing this, we're waiting to do that. So in some ways the plot did suffer a little bit, but I still really, really enjoyed it. If I had to give specific ratings, so there's 6 books. So we have Broken Bonds was the first book. That was a definite 5 stars. As was the second book, Savage Bonds, 5 stars all the way. The third book, Blood Bonds, is where it went a little iffy for me. I still really, really liked it, but I think I'd put it more in a 4-star range just because this is where I got a little bored. But the endings of each of these were really, really wild and really just made me want to keep reading them. And I think she did such a good job with just the juggling act of all the different characters. Like there's a lot of main characters in this story. And unfortunately, after this book is where I think certain characters either kind of fell off a little bit or just altogether kind of had just one characteristic and never really progressed past that. So then we have Force Bonds, Tragic Bonds, and Unchained Bonds, which this is where it's hard because I feel like I gave Unchained Bonds still 5 stars, even though it's probably the 5th and 6th book were probably the weakest of the series. Like I said, I think if maybe they were just kind of condensed down to 1, just because not a ton happens kind of past a certain point. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that's just because I just read the ending. Basically, this whole other element came into play, like past their gifted powers, past their bonded. They each have like a bonded god within them, which sounds a little crazy, which they like kind of talked about a little bit early on, of just certain members' eyes turned black and like something else was controlling them during certain scenes, especially our main girl, like that's what her stuff was. But then we slowly realized everyone out of this bonded group has the same thing, which was a cool twist, I thought. But I kind of wish they got a little of that out of the open earlier, because then the last book was just sort of them sort of reeling with that and dealing with it, and not really like too much action at that point. But I guess if I went through all of the dudes, I don't know, they were all kind of good in their own way. Her friend Sage was probably one of my favorite characters too. It's her best friend, who I just knew was going to be great from the second she appeared. But she was one of those characters where in some ways she was very interesting throughout, but that last like book or two, she just wasn't really in it. And I don't know why. Like even towards the end of the book, there was just like a mention of her being text, and I guess we're just supposed to assume they talked afterwards. But I just would have liked to see that and see a little more of what was going on with her bonded group, because she kind of went through a whole thing through these books as well. And our main character was, you know, pretty awesome. She was running away for several years and kind of got dragged back and was just planning her escape for these first couple of books. But she's just definitely very heroic and would go after people when they were in trouble, and the guys slowly start to realize her reasonings for running away and what that was all about. So once we got kind of past that and kind of past some other kind of predictable like stuff that was happening, it was actually it was fun to sort of see the progression of, I mean, that's why enemies to lovers is such a fun trope, because they just realize different things about each other that you weren't expecting, you know, times 5. I don't know if I want to go through each guy. I guess it was definite like a juggling act, keeping them straight at first. This will be really fun to reread, just because now knowing what I know in those first couple books will definitely be cool to see from a different perspective, because some of them really, really hated her, and then some of them were just kind of mad at her because they didn't really like understand the reasons why. And I just love that she was willing to like give that hate right back, and she was just really smart. The main guy, North, I feel like he was really, really good in the beginning. He was one of those characters that you hated and loved hating, and you knew once he, you know, figured stuff out, everything was going to be fine. And that's when he fell a little flat towards the end. But I think, again, it was a juggling act. Like, they had good banter once they were, you know, in love and together. But the stuff beforehand was just way better, in my opinion. And not that it's a bad thing, like that tension was pulled out, but it's just a sign of a better relationship that they were fine after that point for the most part. But just his scenes, like he was just in the story a little less, I felt like, and his scenes kind of just were few and far between. Gabe too was another one that I kind of liked at the beginning, and then sort of was, you know, probably not my favorite, but he was just kind of the sweet guy, which is probably why I'm just like, oh, he's kind of boring compared to the other ones. But he was nice throughout, but he was kind of one that was sort of put on the back burner a little bit compared to others. Griffin, I feel like, was pretty good throughout, even though he was sort of the first one to kind of see her. His ability helped him see her a little differently than some other people. Atlas, I didn't really trust at the beginning. I don't know, he was just too nice. You know what I mean? So I was just kind of like, I think there's something wrong with him, but I'm glad that it wasn't that he was completely a traitor or something like that. I actually really liked his story arc. I don't mean that they tapered off entirely. They just didn't have as much to do other than being like supportive to our main girl character. Who am I forgetting? Oh, Nox, obviously, was kind of the more antagonistic character throughout. So we knew they were going to have a lot of time to settle things afterwards. He was the last one to sort of give in to her. And then they dive into more of his story. And I think that's why some of the other guys kind of fell away a little bit, because a lot of the last book or two was kind of dedicated to him and her figuring some stuff out. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this series if you are into fantasy romance, maybe darker fantasy romance. It is a Why Shoes story. I don't even think I said that, which I've read before, but I just really liked, I think I just liked this story and the magical elements a lot, even though they weren't kind of explained at some point. But like I said, it was kind of like, who cares at this point? I was really into it. There's a friends to lovers, enemies to lovers, obviously. And yeah, it was just a good time. I really liked her writing style. Her like spice level was like kind of perfect for me, except in that last like book, I kind of wish there was a little more. But that might have just been me. I'm very intrigued by her. Like I said, this book was kind of on my radar for a while, so I'm glad that I got into it this month, because now I get to like talk about it on YouTube. And I'm kind of glad that I did just read them all. There's a few other series that I'm in the middle of this month that I was tempted to just go and read all of them. And I kind of wanted to have different variety, so I'm okay with it, but I'm like already sort of like, oh, what am I gonna read next from her? And I want to reread these, but I need to. There's another series by Bree that I had on my list that I was gonna read maybe later this year, but I have a feeling we're gonna bump that up a little bit. It's called The Crown of Oaths and Curses. It sounds pretty good too. It again sounds like a fantasy romance, enemies to lovers type situation. There's only one book out, so that I'm always hesitant to read stuff until there's more books out, but there are two novellas that are sort of like, it looks like they're like prequels to the first book. So I don't know, I might just like go right into it in the next month or so, because I really enjoyed this. And I kind of hope she does some more like within this world too. I hope so. I just really liked it. So yeah, that was my little rundown and review of the Bonds That Tie series. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next time.